Consuelo athletes, piecewise functions continued, okay? Today we're going to talk exclusively about graphs, so if you have questions on evaluating a piecewise function, you have to go back and look at the last video or, talk to me. It's always a good idea. So again, just to reiterate the general idea that I gave you last time, we're just looking at graphs. These are the rules that you're going to graph. These are the things on the left, these are the things you're actually graphing. But how do you know where to graph each of those? You first have to look at this, okay? You look at the domains first and then determine where you're going to graph each section. So what we're going to do is, in this case, we're going to graph 3x minus 2 over the domain negative infinity to 1, and then negative 4 from 1 to positive infinity. Okay, I'm going to give you two different ways to approach this, okay? And I've already graphed it for you here. First of all, okay, divide the domain into sections. And I am going to draw a little bit more on here because it's a little hard to see. What I've done is I've drawn a dashed line. And again, it's dashed because it's not part of the answer. It's just something that's going to kind of guide us where we're going to make it, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph each part in its respective section. So first of all, I've got 3x minus 2 over the domain up to the, positive 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to negative 2 on the y-axis, and then I'm going to go up 3 and over 1. Or I could also go down 3 and over 1. Okay, but remember, when you go up 3 and over 1, you don't put a point there because there is no point on this graph at positive 1. Okay, and then I draw that part. Okay, and then negative 4 is graphed, okay, from an x value of 1 to positive infinity. Okay, I'm not going to go through the second method. Most people don't like it, but I put it there because some people do like it. And if you want to ask me a question on it, please do. I just don't want to spend time on something that most people don't care for. Myself, I like this one better, but most people don't, especially at the beginning. Okay, so let's just take a look at some examples. So first of all, we're going to split this up into these domains. What are the dividing lines? Negative 3 and 1. So we're going to go to an x value of negative 3. An x value of 1. And by the way, it doesn't matter which one of these three you do first, whether you do the negative 1, the x plus 2, or the 5. It doesn't matter. I usually like to do the things with variables first because the ones that are just straight numbers, like the negative 1 and the 5, those things are just horizontal lines. They're fairly simple. Okay, so I'm going to graph this one first, the x plus 2. Okay? Okay, so how do we graph that? It's got a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of 0, 2. So I'm going to go to a y-intercept of 0, 2 and a slope of down 1 and over 1. Now notice this graph does contain the x values of negative 3 and 1. So I'm going to go down 1 and over 1. I'm going to draw the line. Okay, or again, it's kind of like, technically it's I have like totally blown that. Someone shoot me, please. Okay, what's wrong with this thing? Look at it and tell me real quick. I mean, just think to yourself, what's wrong with it? Okay, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. This has a slope of negative 1. Okay, so we got to get rid of that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is go up 1 and over 1. Right there. And then I'm going to draw the line. So okay. Now that has a y-intercept of 0, 2 and a slope of 1. Fine. What's the next one? X is less than negative 3. So this is going to be a horizontal line. Sorry. It's y is -1, but we're doing it where x is less than or equal to -3. So from this -3 line down, we're going to plot a horizontal line at -1. So I'm going to go to -1. Now, normally I'd put a circle there, okay? I'm just going to point something out, and then I'll fix this again, okay? For this -1, normally I'd put a circle there and then draw the graph. Okay, fine. But what happened? When I drew this first one, which I'll draw in again, notice what happened is that graph ends at that point, ends at a y value of -1. So normally I'd put a circle there because its x is less than -3, not less than or equal to, but I've got a point there already. So all I have to do is draw a horizontal line, okay? And now the last one, where x is greater than 1. Remember, these are the things we're graphing, okay? I'm always looking at these things first because you start with the domain, okay? But these are the things we're graphing. These things right here, okay? So I'm graphing a horizontal line at 5. So I'm going to go at an x value of 1. Okay, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not including that point. Okay, and that's your graph. If you want to, something you can do, just a thought, okay, is at the very beginning, just put like, okay, you notice how we've got 3 sections here, the right, the middle, and the left, or I guess I could say the left, the middle, and the right. Next to each of these domain values, put whether it's the right, the middle, or the left. So here, where x is less than -3, that's going to be the left part. Okay? This -3 to 1 is going to be the middle. And greater than 1 is going to be the right. Okay? Also, take a look at your graph when you're done and make sure you've drawn a function. In other words, let's say you did this by accident. I'm just going to kind of sketch it over here. Let's say you put the first part, then you put the second part, and let's say by accident you do this. Okay, well, if you put a vertical line through that, that's not a function. Okay? So always look at your final answer and make sure you've drawn a function. Okay, again, I know I'm going through this pretty quickly, but for those of you that get it, I don't want to belabor this and take more time than you need. But for those of you that don't, you can go back and look at it again. And again, I strongly suggest you try and do this on your own first and then look at the graph. It'll make more sense to you, I think, if you try it first. Okay, on your own. Okay, so let's take a look at the domain first. So this is what we're looking at first. That's not what we're graphing. Okay, what it says is -2 is the dividing line. Okay, so at -2. All right, now, what are we looking at here? If x is less than or equal to -2, you're talking about the left-hand side. If x is greater than -2, you're talking about the right-hand side of that line, and there are only 2 sides here. Okay, well, how do you graph the first one? How do you graph the left side? Okay, you have a slope of -1 and a y-intercept of 0, -1. Okay, fine, so let's take a look at that. So we're going to go, now here's kind of weird. It's kind of weird because notice I'm going to the left of that line, but the y-axis is to the right of it. So you have to be really careful here. Okay, and I'll try and do this slowly. We're going to go to the y-intercept of -1. Okay, but that point is not actually going to end up on the final graph because that point is on the right side, but we still have to use it. Okay, now I'm going to go down 1 and over 1. or I could go up 1 and negative 1, okay? Now, but still, I don't want to draw anything because I only want to start drawing once I get to the left, okay? That line or to the left. So I'm going to kind of sketch something in, but you wouldn't draw it. What you have to do is kind of eyeball, where are you going to hit that line? Now, you're not going to draw on that thing that I just drew, and I'm just trying to show you what I'm doing, okay? And that's where you're going to start drawing it. So you're going to draw a point there. Now, again, let me emphasize something, like all this is not going to be there, okay? I don't mind if you leave like this point here. You know, this one that was down here at -1. Like these, I don't mind if you just leave them sitting there. I won't interpret that as you're saying that's part of the graph. I will assume you know it's not. Okay, and then we're gonna draw the rest of the graph. Again, draw it as best you can. Okay, and that's the graph -x minus 1 to the left of the dividing line. All right? All right, now let's take a look at the second one. The second one, and by the way, if you have a question on that, stop right now and ask me, okay? Because there's no point in you going on. I mean, you can listen to it again, but you just got to ask me. And the y-intercept is 1, 1. Sorry, 0, 1. Okay, so let's go to a y value of 1, which is right there. And you may wish to, I don't really care, you may wish to kind of erase the ones that you didn't use, but that's up to you. Okay, so we have a y value of 1 and a slope of up 2 and over 1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw this graph, but as soon as we hit that dashed line, we're going to stop drawing it. Okay. So, and we're going to put an open circle. Why? Because it's not, there's no equal sign there. So it's not including the value of an x value of -2. All right. Again, if you need to listen to that again, I suggest you go back and listen to it or ask me. So let's take a look at the next one. Okay, what do we have here? Again, what are we going to do? We're going to look at the domain first. Okay? So what are our dividing lines? -2 and 2. So okay, so x is less than or equal to -2, that's the left. This is the middle. By the way, it's not always left, middle, right. You know, the order of these can be anything. And this is the right. Okay, well, let's take the one in the middle. That's x squared. That's a parabola. You should know how to graph a parabola, but if not, you make an xy table. So when you make an xy table for that, you get 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 4. But 2, 4 is not included because there's no equal sign underneath those. Okay? So it goes up to that, but doesn't include it. And then you have -1, 1, and -2, 4, again, not including it. So we'll, and again, this is going to be a curve, U-shaped curve, something like that. Okay, now what's this? X is a line. Its slope is 1, and the y-intercept is 0, 0. Okay, and let's just go down to the bottom one. It's also line. The slope is -1, and the y-intercept is 0, 0. Okay, now notice the y-intercept is in the middle part, but I don't want to actually graph the y-intercept on the final graph because it's not, it's not in that middle part. But let's graph the first one. Okay, so we're going to go to 0, 0, fine, and then we're going to go to a slope of 1. Okay, well, what's the slope of 1? Up 1 and over 1, or down 1 and over 1. Either way you look at it, you're going to end up, and again, I'm going to draw something that you shouldn't be drawing, but remember, this is the left side. So right there, we're going to start hitting the left side, okay? And again, you wouldn't be drawing that little bit in there. I'm just trying to show you what I'm doing. And then draw the curve, not the curve, but draw the line. Okay. On the next one, we've got the same y-intercept, except we're going to go down 1 and over 1. And then, again, you would not draw these in, but where would it touch it? Where would it touch the division line? Right there. Again, you would not put those in. Okay. And then we'll draw the graph. It would be shown by that. Okay. One function, not 3 functions, not 3 graphs. That's one graph that's just got 3 separate parts. Okay? Again, if you have questions, ask me. And each of these, even the thing we're going to do next, make sure you try it on your own first. Okay? All right. So let's take a look then at the last thing. This is not new. Domain and range of piecewise functions. We did this back when we did domain and range normally. Okay? Again, all you do is you pass a vertical line through the graph and you tell me the first value of x, the last value of x. That's for domain. Then starting at the bottom, you go up, tell me the first value of y and the last value for y. I'm going to just do this in interval notation. If you have a question on what it would be as an inequality, you can ask me, but you should know what that is. You know how to write something as an inequality now. Okay, so again, since you can't see my pencil, you're going to start passing vertical lines through it. And where's the first place we touch the graph? Right there at -2, including -2. Okay? And then notice, if you keep going, you're still touching the graph, still touching the graph, still touching the graph. You may not be touching it at the bottom, but you're touching it at the top. So you're still touching it, still touching, still touching. And this graph keeps going, not down. We're talking domain. It keeps going to the right. Remember, domain is left and right. Okay, range is up and down. So this is still going over to the right. So it's to positive infinity. Okay, for the range, let me get rid of all these lines. Okay, on the range, start at the bottom, and it's touching it at the bottom at negative infinity. Now, once it hits here, though, once it hits at a y value of -1, it's not touching the graph anymore. Well, where does it start touching the graph again? At 0. And then does it ever stop touching the graph? Yes, up here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and I'm sorry, this one should have had a bracket on it. 0 should have had a bracket. Okay, because notice at -1, at a y value of -1, you have an open circle, so it's not included, but at a y value of 0 and a y value of 5, you actually have a point. You know, there's actually something drawn there, so you need to include those. Okay, let's take a look at the last problem here. By the way, these are not new. These problems are not new. We did this back, section 2.1. You can go back and take a look somewhere when I talked about domain and range of graphs. I think it's the 4th video or something like that in section 2.1. Okay, so let's take a look. Touching it, touching it, touching it, still touching it. Still, okay, this one, it never doesn't touch it. So it's negative infinity to positive infinity. Again, that's left to right. Domain's left to right. Okay? All right, for the range, let's start on the bottom. Okay, when we're touching it, because remember those arrows go down, we're still touching it, still touching it, still touching it, still touching it. Even here on 0, we're still touching it because it's touching it. Let me just show you real quickly. It's touching it not where these open circles are, but here. Okay? So we're still touching the graph at 0. Okay, still touching it, but up here at 2, it's not, well, it is touching it right at 2, but after that, it's not touching it. So we include 2, but then the range values stop at 2. Okay, I hope that's helpful. And if, I really can't say it enough. If you have questions, you need to ask me, okay? That's why we have class time, and you don't have to restrict yourself to class time, but that's what I want you to do, okay? All right, have a good day. Bonsuelo, everybody.